acting as one. We might not always be on the same wavelength, and that includes with leader of the NDP, leader of Bloc, or leader of the Conservative Party. I think the message we need to provide to the Americans is that we're ready to dig in for 4 years, girding around the 14-day rule in the Safe Third Country Agreement. That would have required legislative changes, elements around mass cancellations of visas that we want to use to align ourselves to some of the tools that the U.S. has.
You mentioned the importance of lack of partisanship when tackling the border issue. This morning, Jagmeet Singh has written a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau asking for all federal opposition leaders to be included in the kinds of meetings that are happening today, for example, with the premiers and the Prime Minister. Do you agree that federal opposition leaders should be part of these tables?
Look, I may have a different view than David on partisanship. I'm not foreign to it myself at times, but I do subscribe to the fact there is a greater purpose here in making sure that we are acting as one. We might not always be on the same wavelength, and that includes with leader of the NDP, leader of Bloc, or the leader of the Conservative Party. I think the message we need to provide to the Americans is that we're ready to dig in for 4 years. And there's an easy way and there's a hard way to do it, but we're ready for both. Whether a particular member of a party is entitled to be part of the meeting with premiers, I don't think so, frankly, but it's really up to the prerogative of the Prime Minister. It doesn't necessarily always mean bringing every single person to the meeting, but those people are certainly entitled to be briefed at times, and the views of Jagmeet Singh, some of them at times have been valid, so important to listen to that as well. But should he come to every meeting? Absolutely not.
I'm convening a call almost immediately after this press conference with my colleagues who are critics for public safety to have this very discussion. I'm interested in sourcing the best ideas I can source. I think we should all be interested in getting the best ideas we can source. I think we should be looking for common ground, because if you have an ability of purpose and you keep focused on Canadians' interests, you can find a pathway. I think this really calls on us right now to really come together. There's a lot at stake here. As I mentioned, a lot of families right now are worried about their jobs. A lot of investors are asking questions. Transfer pricing experts are spending their time advising their clients on how easy it is to move into upper American border states, move their operations. That's not good for Canada. So if leaders of the opposition have constructive ideas to be considered to implement to improve the situation, I think we're all open to hearing.
Largest mass deportations in history. Do you guys have a sense of the magnitude of asylum claimants that could surge into Canada if he proceeds with something like that? And if this plan, the $1.3 billion plan, is sufficient to handle a potential surge from Trump's deportations?
Answering that question would be speculative right now. We don't know yet how quickly the new administration wants to proceed on that front. We're watching it carefully. We're watching the numbers carefully. We're reaching out, and when I do, as soon as I can, sit down with the border czar, Tom Homan, I'll explore that with him.
We've kind of gone through this roller coaster of discussing the potential massive and, as David said, speculative flow of people that would come to Canada as a result of the new administration, and within weeks talking about what the new administration itself was saying, which is the southbound travel, and that's occupied a lot of our thoughts since then. This is going to be a roller coaster, probably in the public mind. We need to be able to deal with both when and if they occur. They need to make sure that any migration that may occur in an unplanned way to Canada doesn't occur. Those folks are not welcome to Canada if they are doing so in an irregular fashion. And any way and any migration that is controlled has to be done in a way that has Canada at the table with the U.S. We've been able to demonstrate with the current administration our ability to relocate about 15,000 people from the Americas by working together. And I don't want to speculate, but you can imagine someone that takes their life into their own hand, fleeing whatever they are fleeing, going through the Darien Gap, up through Mexico, up into the U.S. If they suddenly feel pressured to leave to Canada, I don't think that border is going to deter them from going back. So if they want to do this the right way, they need to work with us. If they don't, it won't be as successful as they think it needs to be. So that is over and above the mass deployment of capital and resources needed to do something in the proper way. That means it will take time if it's done properly. But again, we are prepared for everything, and it would be too early to speculate what those numbers would be.
Mr. McGinty, when it comes to removals of people who have not only perhaps stayed beyond when they were welcome or the ruling of the IRB, but those who lied on applications to get in, I'm thinking in particular of some high-profile terrorism cases. Speaking to experts who study the CBSA and immigration enforcement in Canada, they've said that, well, the numbers have gone up exponentially over the last year. There still is not enough capacity to deal with the kind of surge that we could be seeing in light of the new measures you're bringing in. Are you looking at increasing the size and resources of the inland enforcement abilities of the CBSA?
Some of the legislative sort of sclerosis that we've been in the last, it's not because of, one of the reasons for prorogation was because of the state of affairs currently in this Parliament, where Conservatives have been monkeying around since the resumption of the House in the fall. And even before then, I proposed asylum reform in the last budgetary cycle. It got ripped out and smoked at committee. So this is something that doesn't go back to yesterday or a simple moment in time where the Prime Minister, I think, responsibly decided to prorogue for the sake of stability of the country. This goes back to a year ago, and people playing games, really a crown jewel worldwide of the refugee system globally and how we process things in a nonpartisan way. Other countries that we compare ourselves to do it in a more arbitrary way. So it's something to be quite proud of, but it hasn't been able to keep up, to your point. And despite historic removals of folks, it can take a long time. And some people will game that system, and some people will just remain in that system through no bad faith, but because they're simply waiting. And there's got to be a way to bridge that gap. It's only going to get worse until it gets better. To, for example, the potential of people coming in and skirting around the 14-day rule in the Safe Third Country Agreement, that would have required legislative changes. Elements around mass cancellations of visas that we want to use to align ourselves to some of the tools that the U.S. has. I think it's important when you think of a North American perimeter. But those will not be able to be done unless we get back to Parliament and vote through a more aggressive package of asylum reform, which I think allows Canada to live up to its reputation of being a country that follows the rule of law, but does have to deal with efficiency gains as well as capacity needs for an overstretched immigration refugee board. And I'm not going to blame the people that process cases. They are working really hard, but you can't just throw bodies at the challenge. You have to actually make some changes, and that includes making changes within the way CBSA processes as well.